Good morning, everyone. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday about the Revolutionary War. We're going to talk about the armed militia now that the colonists put together in response to the fact that King Henry would not listen to their pleas and listen to them wanting to have a vote in what was happening over in England and what was happening with the acts being passed against them and them not having a vote. So the armed militia. The armed militia was considered Minutemen, and that's what they were known as. They were known as the Minutemen. 70 Minutemen on the village green, known as the Battle of Lexington and Concord. They were truly mismatched battle from the start. Farmers and shopkeepers responded to Paul Revere's call. Remember me telling you that the British are coming. So the farmers and shopkeepers responded to that, and they are ready to fight on a minute's notice. That's how they get the nickname Minutemen. 70 Minutemen were waiting for the British soldiers at the village of Green on April 19th, 1775. We're not sure who fired the first shot. Approximately 50 colonists were killed, 45 were wounded or missing. But the British lost 65 and 208 were missing or wounded. And the British lost. And the fact that they lost, it was very, very humiliating. It was embarrassing for them because they were organized. They were a highly trained military outfit, but they were not used to the type of warfare that the colonists were using. The colonists knew the area, they knew the terrain, so they knew where to hide. They knew all this other stuff. And the British were unprepared for the ambushes and easily lost the battle. Like I said, uncertain which side fired the first shot. 50 Americans, and I've already said all this. So that's just the first battle of the Revolutionary War. The Second Continental Congress. It was a time to split from Great Britain official. Okay. So after the battle, the United States said, we are going to officially separate from Britain. They did a committee selected to draft the reasons for separation. A committee, including Thomas Jefferson, was selected to write a draft for all the reasons the colonists wanted to complete their independence and succeed from Great Britain. Jefferson was selected to write it, and they were chosen by the congressional vote to draft the document. So Thomas Jefferson was somebody very, very important, and they met in Philadelphia to do this for the Second Continental Congress. The Declaration of Independence. All right, so guys, this is what this is all about, right? We're going to declare our independence from Great Britain. So we were about to be a new country to be born. All right. And once again, Thomas Jefferson was the unanimous choice to draft the document that would become the birth certificate of the United States. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Jefferson did some declaration revisions. It listed colonist rights and grievances against King George III. And it had 4 parts to it. It had the preamble, the Declaration of Rights, the list of grievances, and the resolution. All right. And everybody who was part of this signed it. This is the most important document in the United States history, as they were able to declare their independence. We were able to declare independence from Great Britain. So some of the key quotes in the Declaration: we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That is a big one. When the United States declared their independence, they believed that all men were created equal and they should all be treated equally. And it is the same. The other one was that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That is what they believed every man should be able to have in their lifetime. And that was something big that was put into the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock was the first to sign in large print. If you go and look at the Declaration of Independence or look it up online, you will see John Hancock as big as there is the person signing it. And he made a comment that if he was going down. He wanted to make sure that his name was there and that he stood for something, because anyone who signed it, they would be caught and they would be hanged. And Benjamin Franklin made this comment: "We must all now hang together, or most assuredly we will hang separately." So that basically meant Benjamin Franklin saying we got to be together on this. We can't go separately, and we all have to believe in one thing. So the people who chose sides, the Patriots, they supported the revolution, and the loyalists who supported the king, they were known as redcoats also, or lobsterbacks, were the British Army. Okay, so if you hear the redcoats are coming or something like that, that meant the British Army was on their way. And that's the two sides between the Revolutionary War. What happened to those who signed? 5 were captured by the British. They were eventually released. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 1 lost his son in the Continental Army, and several suffered wounds in various battles. So it wasn't just politicians signing the Declaration of Independence. These were people who actually went out and fought as well, and they stood for something. So whenever you're reading about this and you're watching the videos from yesterday and stuff, these are some of the things that I want you guys to think of. What was the biggest advantage the American colonists had during the Revolutionary War? What was the biggest advantage that Great Britain had during the Revolutionary War? And then if you look at this chart, who should win, right? And then you can look at the strengths and weaknesses, and you can decide who should win this war. And looking at it, in all reality, Great Britain should have won the war. So when we look at the Revolutionary armies, Americans shot more accurately. The British carried 3 days of provisions, and the British wore about 100 pounds of gear. Okay, so the British carrying 3 days of provisions, that was good. That means that they could be out in the woods and fighting for 3 days before they ran out of food or water. The fact that they had gear that weighed about 100 pounds made them a little bit slower. All right. But the most important thing was the Americans shot more accurately. In a war, you want to be able to shoot accurately, right? You don't want to be able to be like a stormtrooper and not be able to hit the broadside of a barn. So the Americans being able to shoot more accurately was very, very key. So when we think about the British Army, it was the most powerful army in the world at the time. It was well equipped with weapons, and it was highly trained and disciplined for wars on land or high seas. We're talking about the best of the best in the world at the time. The British Army was the best army in the entire world at the time when we got our revolution and we fought against the British. But in America, we knew the lay of the land, right? We knew where the dips and valleys were. We knew where to hide and things like that. And we use our weapons appropriate for the landscaping. So what that means is we knew what weapons to use where. Obviously, if you're using guns or cannonballs or cannons, you're not wanting to shoot that up a hill or anything like that. You're going to use the weapons in the correct place to get the most effective use out of them. The Americans also wore pieces of different uniforms, and they had brown army clothing. So if you think about this now, our army now, the United States Army has brown in their coloring. Some of the British advantages, like I said, they were well equipped, they were disciplined, and they had the strongest navy in the world also. So not only were they able to fight on the land, they also had the strongest navy in the world. American advantages, like I told you earlier, we had the accuracy of the rifle, we knew the land, we used guerrilla warfare tactics. Okay, so what that means is instead of just lining up on a field and shooting, like that's what they basically did, they just lined the armies up in a row and just shot at each other, and that's how war was played out for the longest time. The colonists did guerrilla warfare tactics, meaning they weren't lining up in a field across from another army and just shooting until whoever had the last man standing. The colonists were able to hide. They were able to use the terrain to ambush, to jump the British soldiers and to catch them off guard. And that is a really, really big thing that happened that allowed the Americans to have a great big advantage. And the superb command. George Washington was one of the best commanders in the Revolutionary War. So we're going to talk about some military leaders briefly and quickly, other Americans. George Washington, like I said, he was the commander of the American forces. Nathaniel Greene was the top strategist. Henry Knox was the artillery expert, and Benedict Arnold was the commander under Washington. We will talk a little bit about Benedict Arnold later on because he ended up going to the British and betraying the American leaders. Some of the British leaders: General Charles Cornwallis, General John Burgoyne, Benedict Arnold. Again, like I said, he went over to the British. William Howe, all considered America one of the worst places to serve. They did not like America, and they did not like to serve in the United States. Other key players: France, Spain, Germany, and Poland. Hesse mercenaries from Germany. The Monclar de la the Frenchmen who supported the American cause. Huge percentage of American gunpowder came from France. Remember, France did not like Great Britain, so the French helped out the United States with their American Revolution and gaining their independence. When it came to the war at sea, the United States did not have a big navy. They only had about 3,000 men enlisted, and we made 13 frigates, which are basically battleships like you see here. Problem is, most, if not all, were destroyed or captured. So we made 13 ships, and all of them were destroyed or captured, so it didn't really help. The Colonial Navy, authorized by Continental Congress, October 13, 1775. Some of the major battles: Fort Ticonderoga, I can't talk today, Bunker Hill, and Trenton. During the Fort Ticonderoga in 1775, it was a key strategic location in New York. Okay. Ethan Allen and about 125 Green Mountain Boys attacked the forts. The fort was taken without firing a shot. So that was the guerrilla warfare that I was talking about, how the United States were able to just get in and surprise Great Britain, their armies, and take them over without firing a shot. British officers and women and children were captured. Cannons were taken from that area to Boston. Henry Knox was American Army top artillery commander, and he was the major hero of the American Revolutionary War. The Battle of Bunker Hill in 1775, it's located near Boston. The Redcoats were victorious in the third charge. It took them 3 tries, but eventually they were victorious. And the reason why they were victorious, we ran out of ammunition. You can't really fight somebody if you can't, if you don't have anything to fight with. But this was a moral victory for the American Army because they were able to hold off the Redcoats when they really, really, really wanted to take this location. And the only reason why they were able to take it was we ran out of ammunition. So thinking about Bunker Hill, it was the costliest battle for British during the war. British casualties was 1,000, over 1,000. The American casualties, we lost about 450 people. The British began to get nervous at this point. They started to realize that the colonists were not going to be somebody that they could just show up and roll over. So the British started to get nervous, and Washington took command of the army 2 weeks after this battle. So once this battle occurred, George Washington said, "I've had enough. I'm going to take over the army, and we are going to win this war." So the Bunker Hill famous quote was by Israel Putnam: "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes," which basically meant you did not want to waste ammunition before they got close enough so you knew what you were going to hit, and you were going to be the most devastating warfare that you could get. The Battle of Trenton was a surprise attack the day after Christmas. Washington crossed the Delaware. This is a very famous battle because it was the day after Christmas. Nobody expected the Americans to attack the day after Christmas, and definitely did not expect Washington to cross the Delaware into Trenton to attack. And approximately 1,000 German soldiers fighting for the British were captured. Trenton and Princeton, imagine the American casualties were 4. The Americans lost 4 people. The German leader, Colonel Rail, was mortally wounded, and Washington cleared British from central New Jersey, which was a very big thing to happen because that gave the colonists a passageway along the East Coast. Some other significant battles were Saratoga, Winter at Valley Forge, Yorktown. They were all blend of success and failures for the American Army. Each time the Americans would fight, they would learn and they would take those lessons and they would apply those to the next battle. Battle of Saratoga was the turning point of the war. It was the biggest American victory at the time. Approximately 5,000 British surrendered to George Washington during this battle. After the American victory, France changed its policies. Okay, so at that point, after the Americans won, France was like, you know what? Maybe you're onto something. Maybe you can win this thing. So we're going to form an alliance. And then France declared war on Britain the next month. Spain declared war in 1779, and Bernardo de Galvez chased British troops out of Louisiana and Florida. So not only was Great Britain fighting against the Americans, now France and Spain both were fighting against Britain in the Americas. But also remember, in Europe, they were fighting too. So Great Britain was seeing a 3-headed monster come at them during this war. Valley Forge, the American Army ran out of food and clothing. Valley Forge briefly was a refuge. Supplies ran out and many died. Washington appeals to the Continental Congress for help. This was the low point for the American Army, and any deserters were shot. So anybody who did not want to stay were shot, which is kind of harsh, but that is kind of what they did back then. All right, so this is whenever the French Marquis de Lafayette joined Washington as an aide. So now we have a reputable military leader helping George Washington command his army. Frederick von Steuben drilled the troops, teaching them military discipline. So now, once again, now we're no longer just farmers and shopkeepers. Now we are getting training to fight against the British and fight against to become independent. The Battle of Yorktown, French blockade aided this final battle. The escape for the British was impossible. So the French said, no, you're not going to leave. You're going to have to stay. And then British General Cornwallis faced American forces approximately twice his size. And this is a battle. This is a look of Yorktown. You can see where the British were. They were all housed right in these little things. And the American French troops, which are all the purple and the blue, you can see how they surrounded the British. There was no way for the British to leave. And approximately 8,700 British troops surrendered. Like I said, they were pinned in by the American and French naval fleets. And General Benjamin Lincoln accepted the surrender sword. And British bands played "The World Has Turned Upside Down" whenever the British surrendered to the United States. So because of that, the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, which officially ended the Revolutionary War and gave the United States their independence. It also set many geographic borders, including the United States and Canada. As you can see here, the United States was pretty much what we see now on the eastern seaboard of everything that we own here. Florida was returned to Spain during this time. So poor Florida has gone back and forth under different countries' control. British merchants must be paid for lost items, and the loyalists must be paid for their lost property. So what happened whenever it happened? What happened after the war? Well, penalties were inflicted on the loyalists. Those are the people that were wanted a king to win. They wanted Great Britain to win. Some loyalists were tarred in feathers and put on ships bound for Canada or Great Britain. So they just kicked them out. The Articles of Confederation, we're going to talk a little bit about this coming up whenever there's a video I want you guys to watch. Basically, it was written by John Dickerson in 1777, ratified in 1781, and it governed the Americas between 1781 and 1787. And that's an important thing. It was a very important because this is where we eventually got our Bill of Rights, and we got the things that govern the United States. And it paved the way for the new Constitution. So, effects, results, outcomes. Northwest Ordinance of 1787 has set up rules for statehood, 160,000 people, outlawed slavery in new states, and free education in new states. So, the United States said, okay, we're going to do this. If we have more states that want to join us, this is how it's going to work. And that's where the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 came into play. The Northwest Ordinance is how Ohio became a state. We're going to learn about that today also. And the big thing was that it outlawed slavery in new states, which is going to be a big battle and big sticking point during the Civil War. And we will talk about the Civil War next week. But that is something to remember. So some concluding thoughts about the Revolutionary War. It lasted 8 years, timeless because that's how we became our independence. Subject of countless plays and films, and of course, heroes, right? There were heroes made. George Washington, Paul Revere, you guys are going to hear about those guys throughout your entire school career and probably your entire life because they were heroes of the Revolutionary War. And it became a birth of a nation. We became the United States of America. All right, guys, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. That was something, and you can see how Ohio became a state. Ohio was part of the Northwest Ordinance. As you can see, it was a giant piece of land right through here. And the Northwest Ordinance was a confederation, a group of loosely joined but sovereign states. I'm going to turn, I don't know if you guys can hear the volume or not, but it's making some weird noises. So I'm going to turn the volume down so that way you guys don't hear the sound effects. So the Northwest Ordinance, it was just a confederation, right? It was just this group right through here, loosely joined, but we were together as one. So what is the Northwest Territory? It was a designated piece of land that includes the state of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota, right through here. You do not have to take a picture of the map. But this was the Northwest Territory, okay? This was the next spot where the United States wanted to expand and get into more states and expand their territory. So after the Treaty of Paris, remember the Revolutionary War is over, Great Britain lost and they seceded. They gave up all their lands extending to the Mississippi River. And Congress had no idea because now Congress needed to do what they were going to do with all the land. And the thing is, remember, each state acted independently, even though they were governed by a federal government, each state could act independently. So many of the original 13 states became making claim on the Mississippi River or extending to the Mississippi River. So what ended up happening was many states claimed it. So North Carolina could say, look, we're going to go here. We're going to expand out to here, South Carolina and Georgia. So all these states said, you know what, we want all this land. So that was the problem. Many states claimed the Western lands. Pennsylvania wanted part of Ohio. You know, everybody, all these states wanted the land. So the solution was all states agreed to give up their claims to Congress so the Congress could sell the land for the good of the country. So that was something that happened to allow the United States to get back some of the money that they lost during the Revolutionary War. And whenever the Northwest Ordinance was passed, also the Land Ordinance of 1785 passed, which Congress's plan to sell the land of the Northwest Territory. And this is how they kind of broke it up. And then we're not going to get into the craziness of this, but it was a rectangular survey. And when they sold the plots of land, that's how they sold them. They sold them in plots of squares. Okay. And each one was a township. Again, we're not going to get into too much of this. It was 6 miles. It was 36 miles. It just all depends. So that's how they were selling it. So we're not going to get too much into detail on this. Just remember that they sold square land to cover some of the costs of the Revolutionary War. So the one thing that we do want to touch on is whenever they were selling these pieces of land, this was the brainchild of Thomas Jefferson. He did not want the sale of the land just to go to homeowners. He wanted part of that land to be set up for a school for that square, that township. So one section of each township went to start a school up. $640 in 1785 went to education. So the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, it established these things. It established the principles and procedures for the orderly expansion of the United States. Remember, I said it defined the rules of how states would join the Union. It gave the statehood. So here's how a state could become a state according to the Northwest Ordinance. When the population reaches 5,000 adult males, the area can elect its own legislation, send non-voting members to Congress. When the population reaches 60,000 adult males, then you can start writing a state constitution and apply for statehood. If Congress approves the state constitution, the area will become a state. And finally, out of the Northwest Ordinance, we got 5 states. The 5 states were Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those were the 5 states that came out of the Northwest Ordinance. And part of Minnesota, but just a little part of it up there. Also, the Northwest Ordinances guaranteed these rights. They guaranteed the rights to a trial by jury, the right to a public education, the right to freedom of religion, and the right of prohibition of slavery. So for your homework today, I need you to read your Northwest Territory reading, watch the Articles of Confederation video, watch the Northwest Ordinance video, and remember, start working on that research project, right? It's due Friday. So you can do your research project worksheet 3 today and start to work on that. You don't have to turn that in. It's only for reference. Okay. Special bonus video work. Remember, I told you about Ohio bonus video work. It's located under week 10 and 11. Bonus work. It's just a piece of video that I want you to upload. It doesn't have to be famous or it doesn't have to be fancy, but that's just something I want you guys to do if you want some extra bonus work. You're guaranteed at least 4 points if you do the bonus work. All right. So remember, your project is due Friday. Uploaded a Flipgrid research paper completed in a 4-question quiz. It's 3 parts to the project. I did put everything up there, so you should be able to watch some of the stuff that I put up and be able to do your project without any issues. If you do have issues, feel free to reach out to me, and I am available to do conferences and show you how to do things if you need to. Okay? All right, guys, I hope you have a great Wednesday. Bye-bye.